Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Retro Odyssey podcast. I'm your tiny host, Adam Miller, and joining me today we have Mini Matt and pocket-sized Ryan. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Right, we're one short this week. Steve's had a bit of an accident. Well, he's sold his soul to SNK and he's found himself in a Neo Geo Pocket Color. He wanted a pack of hobnobs, and that's the price he paid. But Ryan's got a hold of it, so we can switch on from time to time to get his opinions if Ryan's got access to the Neo Geo.
Yeah, I got it. I think I can manage.
Nice one. Well, hopefully it should make things go, smoothly with you having access to the on button. But anyway, yeah, this week things are going to be a little bit smaller than usual. So we're going to squint our eyes at some games that are exclusive to handheld consoles. So before we jump in, let's talk about our history with handheld consoles. What consoles did you have growing up? Handheld ones.
I had a Game Boy, mainly growing up. We didn't have a huge amount of games for it. We had Tetris, but my favourite game for it was actually James Pond 2 Robocod. Me and my sister both loved that game and we played it constantly. The Super Mario Land I had as well. I played that quite a lot, but Robocod was like my go-to game. And then I got myself a Game Boy Advance, and I only really had a small handful of games for that. I had Wario Land 4, which I played quite a lot. And I think I had a cartridge which had some retro games on. I know it had Dig Dug on it. I believe it had Galaxians on it.
Is that like the Namco?
It might have been.
It's like called the Namco Museum.
It may very well have been that, yeah.
You see, I didn't end up getting the Game Boy, or at least I'm pretty sure it was the Game Boy Color. But the only thing I remember having with the Game Boy Color is Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Crystal. Because I remember my friend had a Game Boy, and then obviously I had one as well. Just so I could trade and do all the usual stuff with all the link cable, if you remember that.
Yeah.
But to be honest, the main handheld I had was the Game Gear. So that was the thing I played on, which was primarily the first two Sonic games and some other ones. I remember having Tasmania and this 4-in-1 collection, and obviously one of the games that we're covering today.
You contributed to the great battery famine in the early 90s?
Well, I had rechargeable batteries. And to be honest, I always used to go to my grandmother's house, and that's where I'd play it. And I'd use the actual adapter and just plug it into a house, sit in the corner, just play my Game Gear.
To be fair, the Game Boy had really good battery life. Whereas
what was the battery life on the Game Boy?
The Game Boy was several hours.
Because the Game Boy was it was 4 AA's, and I think it got 7 to 8 hours out of it.
I think the Game Gear was 30 minutes or something. I remember I'd play it in the car, and then the battery had cut out just before I'd get to my grandmother's house, so
yeah,
couldn't have been longer than 30 minutes.
The Game Gear with good batteries in it has 3 hours. It was 2 to 3 hours tops.
Could be because they're rechargeable. I don't think you get as much from rechargeables.
No, you don't. Especially back in the 90s, they didn't have you get a couple good charges after that, and then half-life.
Yeah.
I found out something cool about the Game Gear, though, and why the battery life is so garbage. It's because the backlighting is actually a little fluorescent bulb.
Really?
Because they weren't doing LED backlighting then at that point. Yeah, they had a little fluorescent bulb.
The console was really powerful, and then you had all the backlight.
Well, it turns out there's a mod for it that puts an LED strip in there where the fluorescent light's supposed to be, and the battery life of the Game Gear jumps to 9 hours.
Well, have you actually seen the Game Gears with the LED screen? They look really beautiful.
I have, yeah.
They're wonderful. I really want to get one at some point. Modded Game Gears look really good, because you can get mods where they've got an LED screen, and you get mods as well where you can hook it up to a TV. So you can actually plug into your TV and just, play it that way. I suppose an old-fashioned Switch.
I kind of want to go through the trouble of modding my the Game Boy I have with a backlit screen and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's the main problem I had with the Game Boy is the screen. Because you'd go outside with it and you just won't be able to see anything.
I remember my brother had a Game Boy, but one of the batteries exploded one day. It's got all corroded and it would turn on, but it only turned on for 5 minutes at a time. But then one year he got a Game Boy Color, And that was kind of like really where we got into the handheld gaming, Super Mario Deluxe and all this good stuff. And I remember I got a Game Boy Color. I don't remember from where, but I had that for years, and then I upgraded, like I traded that in for a Game Boy Advance. And eventually I had gotten a DS, like I traded in for a DS. And yeah, basically I've gone through all of the Nintendo handhelds over the years.
Yeah, I don't think I ever owned a Game Boy Advance or anything after that. I'm pretty sure it was just like the Game Boy Color I had, and the Game Gear, obviously. One thing I do remember having though is like loads of stupid accessories for the Game Gear. I mean, obviously there was like the battery pack, but then it had like a huge magnifying glass thing you'd hook onto it to make the screen look bigger. But it made it so difficult to focus on because it was just a big magnifying glass. It was basically pointless.
The Game Boy suffered from the same accessory cancer.
Yeah, she had like the Game Boy printer. Well, like the Game Gear had like a TV tuner so you could watch TV on it.
It was terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, like I remember having it, but I don't ever remember using it and getting it to work. I think I probably just got it and was just like, this don't work, never used it.
There was a tuner for the Game Boy Advance Well, I guess it'd been the Game Boy Advance, but I saw this thing where someone got the tuner for the Game Boy Advance and plugged it into a Game Boy Advance SP, and then they got a TV, like a little mini TV broadcaster that they hooked their GameCube up to.
All right. I know that there's like an adapter for the Game Boy Advance that links to the GameCube, which you can use to connect with some games.
Yeah, but this was like completely different. They took the little TV broadcaster, and I don't know what the point of this was, but essentially they plugged the GameCube, broadcasted a TV signal to the Game Boy Advance, and had a wireless monitor.
That's really strange. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, the guy was playing. He's like, there's a lot of latency here, but for the sake of doing it, if you really want to do this, you can.
Yeah, I don't know why they released like some accessories, because it seemed like just doing it for the sake of they could do it, not like anyone even wanted it.
The AVGN has an episode dedicated to like Game Boy accessories, and
because I mean, like the only Game
bad.
Boy accessory that I can think of that's good is like, well, I suppose the little light thing for it, and then the link cable for multiplayer. I mean, stuff like the Game Boy printer. Have you ever used like the Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer?
I never had one.
With that is like literally impossible.
But it works.
It does work. It sort of works. But I don't think you'd ever find yourself in a situation where you think, oh, I want to take a photo of this lovely scenery. Let's whip out the Game Boy camera.
Well, let's just keep in mind that especially when it comes to first-party accessories, Nintendo is sort of king in that department.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that can't be considered a primary function, you had the Game Boy had the Game Boy printer. There was an official 4-way multiplayer tap that like 2 games took advantage of. I think every Game Boy had a cable up until the DS was wireless.
Yeah.
The Game Boy Advance, or not the Game Boy Advance, the Super Game Boy could be considered an accessory.
Yeah.
And then it went full tilt. Oh, you had the transfer pack for like Pokemon Coliseum on the 64.
Oh, yeah, the brokey games.
Then the Wii had a whole ton of accessories, steering wheels, and Nintendo, like first-party accessories, not like little third-party crappy ones.
Yeah.
The Wii U had a couple, and now even with the Switch, we got those fancy pants NES controllers. Yeah, the controllers that plug into the side look stupid.
They'll cost you 60 quid, and they don't really have like the rumble in it, the HD rumble, and they just only used for the NES games, so pretty overpriced. Yeah, I know what you mean. And now they have the little Pokeball that's going to be working with Pokemon Go and I'm getting that.
Pokemon Go Pikachu.
Yeah, I'm going to grab that. I'm going to keep the box as well, because I'm pretty sure that once I'm done with it, the value of it's going to be pretty high, like with the Pokewalker.
Right. Maybe get some fun out of it then.
Well, yeah, I imagine I'll use it until I'm done with it, and once I can't use it anymore, I can probably sell it for at least the price I got for it.
Right. Smart.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, Nintendo's the king of accessories.
Yeah, and then Sega's probably the king of shit accessories.
Right.
I mean, just looking at stuff like the 32X and the Sega CD, I suppose, justifies that title.
I don't know, the Sega CD is pretty decent.
It is, but it was a really bad move, and they didn't really use it that well. A lot of games they made were just Mega Drive games, but with like fancy audio, or FMV games. So they kind of mucked it up quite a lot.
Night Trap was huge.
To be fair, I did think they made the right move, though, because I think there were 2 games. I remember there being 2 games that were getting released at about the same time, and Sega published one of them, and then another company published the other. And Sega decided to go with Night Trap, and then the other one was just like a pile of shit or something. I don't remember. I don't remember all my Sega CD history. But anyway, we're starting to go a bit off topic, so I think it's time to go into the games now, I think. Right, so we might as well start off with Steven's pick. Let's go and fetch him from the Neo Geo Pocket Color, if you won't mind turning it on, Ryan. And we'll see what he has to say about his game this week.
Yeah, let's do it.
My pick for this month was Sword of Mana on the Game Boy Advance. This game actually started as Final Fantasy Adventure for the original Game Boy back in 1991. It was released at a time when Final Fantasy was still riding the initial wave from that first game, and in fact the game's original name in Japan was Seiken Densetsu Final Fantasy Gaiden, which literally translates to Holy Sword Legend Final Fantasy Side Story. It was actually very much intended to be just a Final Fantasy side series, and it ended up being so successful that it spawned its own series, which was the Mana series. The Game Boy Advance version was created as a way to bring the game up to where its sequels were. So Secret of Mana was much beloved for its music and its gameplay, and it had the unique ring menu style setup, which carried on to Seiken Densetsu 3, which is a game that we never got here. But the original was still that very basic game. So with Sword of Mana, they implemented the ring system. They called it a remake, but it was really an entirely different game. They redesigned it from the ground up. They put new story elements in. They added new characters. There was just a lot of additions to this to try and make it bigger and fit with what the original series had been. And in the process of doing that, I think they added a little too much, and that put some people off. I know you three are going to talk about how the beginning it takes like 10 minutes to really do anything, because you go through all these dream sequences and all this extra story that you really don't need. So they, I think, got a little bit pretentious with this release and tried to do too much with it, and it ended up being a detriment to the game overall. And from what I've seen, it's actually the least liked version of this game by the fan base. There was also another remake released in 2016 for the PlayStation Vita, and that one was called Adventure of Mana, and that was more of a one-to-one remake of the original Final Fantasy Adventure, but just with 3D graphics and the ring system. From what I can tell, Adventure of Mana is what people have said is the best version of the game to play. As far as this version goes, the gameplay is solid. All the weapons and the basic combat is very similar to the original. Like I said, the story is a little overdone, and they completely redesigned everything. But the game is all right. I definitely think this is the weakest of the Mana series, especially this version of it. But I don't think it's a bad game. I just think this version is a misguided game, and I think we probably would have been better off if I had chosen the original version rather than this one.
Right, now that we've put Stephen away, we might as well give our own opinions of his title for this week. So, yeah, what did you guys think of it?
I'm not generally a fan of JRPGs. I've tried several in the past, and just really not my kind of thing, to be honest. But I was quite surprised to find that I actually really enjoyed this one. It has its problems, but I quite like the combat, I like the exploration, I like the leveling up, the way you can like swap out weapons and stuff like that. And there are kind of like two different heroes you can choose from as well, with slightly different stories. And it just kind of captured my imagination for some reason, and I've been having quite a lot of fun playing it. Even though I didn't get massively far in, I only got about 3 hours in, it's something that I definitely have been enjoying.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how some people might like it. Like with you, I don't really dig JRPGs. In fact, I hate like 99% of JRPGs that I play. And I kind of think this game had the potential to be a game that I'd like, because I thought the combat was quite good, because the combat was not really like your typical JRPG fare. So, like in a JRPG, you've normally got turn-based battles and things like that. This is more of a real-time action JRPG type thing.
Yeah.
And I found that the combat was actually kind of okay. But one of the things that I have problems with JRPGs is the story and how they tell the story. I find that they can be a little bit nonsensical with the story and have kind of generic, annoying stories. And then they're just filled with loads of text because they don't know how to tell stories properly. They seem to have the tell, not show approach rather than the show, not tell approach. I kind of like games where there's a good story, but not text box after text box after text box. They actually reveal things gradually over time and start building the world up and building the story up. Whereas this, I felt like I was stuck in text boxes for the longest time. Got to a point where I couldn't even focus on the story because I was getting annoyed with it and was just trying to skip dialogue boxes without reading it. And I think that at that point it kind of lost me. But that was like the start of the game, so I'd stopped caring about the story before it even started.
As Stephen mentioned, it is a full 10 minutes before the game will actually let you play it.
Yeah.
There's a full 10 minutes of text boxes and story.
Yeah, but even once you get into it, there's still like a lot of dialogue to go through and a lot of story. It's quite full on with it, at least from the bit I played.
And that's basically what turned me off too, was just instantly a wall of text. And while, spoiler alert, like the dream sequences and whatnot were interesting enough, I just kind of wanted to play the game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't letting me. Secret of Mana also has a decent amount of text, but it's not quite as overbearing.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the common things about the JRPGs I actually like, is that they're, not as overbearing with the story and the dialogue. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it might outstay its welcome a little bit, but by the time it outstays its welcome, it's
over.
It's basically going at that point, so it's not, overwhelming. But at this point, it gets too much and just continues. And that's honestly where my biggest gripe was with the game. I mean, the actual combat itself, I'd say, was all right, but even then, I didn't find it good enough to incentivize me to get through the story.
One of the issues that I did have with the combat was the ranged combat, where you will be kind of like lining up a shot and the enemy will like move away just as you're doing it, which isn't so bad when you just throw in an arrow because you've got like infinite arrows. But when you're casting a spell, and that's costing magic points that you have to kind of like, it takes a while for them to build back up. If the enemy moves like right at the last second, then you've completely lost that spell. It's completely missed, and it can screw you over.
Oh yeah, definitely. I kind of thought that as well with, some of the combat. I kind of feel like it should be a little bit more, I don't know, not forgiving, but they should take that into account, because as you say, with like ranged combat, it just gets annoying and to the point where you just kind of think, well, I'm not going to bother unless I have to.
That is a fair, and honestly, playing the game, and I even got this a little bit of feel from Secret of Mana as well when I was playing that 5 or 6 months ago. playing through this and playing Secret of Mana both just kind of made me appreciate Legend, like A Link to the Past a little more. You can actually compare these two titles a bit as far as just like basic control goes and the world exploration, and it's not bad, it's just it's been done better.
And one thing as well that I kind of thought was a bit disappointing was the music. Like, normally, even like the bad JRPGs have kind of catchy tunes, but I kind of find the music a little bit boring in this.
I think what may have contributed to that, I mean, personally, I think the music's decent, but the issue is the Game Boy Advance doesn't have a huge amount of memory on the cartridge. So what you actually have is a 30-second loop of music that just keeps playing over and over and over while you're in that area. So it will like start to grate on you within a couple of minutes. And there doesn't appear to be a way to turn that music off either.
Yeah, and I don't know, because thing is, like with handhelds, as you say, there's a limited amount of power. So you get music where they have a 30-second loop repeated. But there's a lot of games where they have that loop and you don't notice it because it's actually quite good. But I think with this, they're trying to make something that would work in a console game if they had that and then more to it. But because they don't have that, they've just got one section of a song and just repeated it.
Yeah.
And it becomes noticeably annoying.
I would say that's fair. I rather enjoyed the music myself, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, maybe it's just me. I think the story just grayed on me so much that other things started to annoy me probably more than they would have if I'd have, enjoyed the game a little bit more.
Visually, though, and I bounce from that, visually the game is very beautiful, especially for a Game Boy Advance game.
Oh yeah.
It looks stellar.
Yeah, that's one of the positive things I was going to say about it. It looks pretty nice.
It's super bright. Sprites are really clean. As far as like a 32-bit console goes, which I believe the Game Boy Advance is 32-bit,
yeah,
it's pretty spectacular. It's a spectacle.
Yeah.
It even looks decent on a TV screen as well.
Oh, were you playing on a Game Boy player?
TV?
I was playing on the Retron 5.
Okay.
So I had it playing on my TV. For some reason, whenever you've got kind of like a handheld game and the sprites are being stretched over kind of like quite a large TV, putting on a scanline filter on the Retron 5 will make it look a hell of a lot better. I usually hate scanline filters for kind of like regular console games, but for some reason with handhelds it just makes it that much more bearable. Otherwise I find it a little bit too pixely.
Yeah, but this game was a pretty good looking game. Oh, one thing as well about the game, which I didn't actually realise before Stephen mentioned it, is that this actually fits into the Final Fantasy franchise. And while I played it, I never even realised that. It didn't dawn on me that it was a Final Fantasy game, basically.
No, because it's so different.
Well, yeah, because like Final Fantasy is pretty much everything I hate in a JRPG, whereas this, as I say, at least from a combat perspective, is actually, okay.
Wasn't it meant to be originally a Final Fantasy game and then they like retooled it?
That's what happened. They started off as Matt said, it was like it literally boiled down to Final Fantasy side quest or side story is like what the original Japanese title translated to.
Yeah.
And it was popular enough that they just spun it off. So it is still technically related to the Final Fantasy series. Yeah, it's related to the Final Fantasy world as much as Final Fantasy 7 and 8 are related to each other. They're just kind of not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's technically a Final Fantasy spin-off.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't even realise that because it is so different from the Final Fantasy games.
And like I said, this is the remake of the Game Boy Advance game, which was Final Fantasy Adventure. And they made like 4 of those.
So, how far did everyone get with the game? I know that Stephen put up a challenge which was to acquire 3 weapons, which I'll admit I didn't get that far. I got 2.
I didn't even get 2, even though I got about 2-3 hours in, but that's because I just got lost and bullshitted a lot. And just murdered shit.
I managed to get 3 weapons. I got as far as getting out of the mansion, going into a cave, killing a 3-headed dragon and then getting out of the cave again, which is about 3 hours worth of playtime, and I managed to pick up the staff, the bow, and the flail as weapons.
Nice one. Well, I think you've got the furthest of all of us, apart from obviously Stephen. Yeah, I tried playing it, but, more than like an hour and a half, 2 hours into it, I was just sick of it.
The wall of text just burnt me out like immediately.
Yeah, same with me. I'd say like the gameplay was better than I anticipated, but I still didn't find it enjoyable enough to keep me going. As Matt said, with stuff like the range combat, and I don't know whether it's the hit detection or whether it just needs to be so precise that sometimes even the combat just starts to annoy you.
For some reason, they made your sidekick really annoying as well. I mean, I don't know if you were playing as a hero or the heroine. I was playing as a heroine. And,
yeah, me too.
And the hero is just such an arsehole. There is one really super problematic dialogue exchange in that game that comes quite early on in the mansion, where they're sleeping in the same room, and the heroine says, "Don't try to do anything to me while I'm asleep." And the hero says, "Who would want to?"
Huh.
That is, yeah.
That's just straight up savage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
Well,
what a dick.
I mean, it probably could work later on in the game if they, established a, buddy-buddy relationship, and it's, it's a bit of a jokey kind of thing said between, but at that point in the game, it's, it's still pretty early.
I played as the hero, and I gotta say, he looks like a child, but he is jacked. Those are like Mr. Universe sculpted muscles. I took notice of that immediately.
Well, it's an old video game, so you kind of get that, don't you? You get the big-boobed women and the muscly men, and that's basically video game characters.
That's the 90s and 2000s for you.
Yeah. Right, well, I don't know if you guys have anything more to say about it. For an RPG, I've got quite a little to say about it because, I mean, to be honest, I think for me, because of my hatred of the genre, I kind of feel a bit unfair, criticizing it, because I know that a lot of people will probably get to that story and think, oh, it's like one of the best stories or whatever. But for me, I find that kind of style of storytelling to be quite lazy. But it could just be because I don't like the genre, so I don't want to be too harsh on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one that I think I will go back at some point and finish. Because whereas it's not so much about the story, I just quite like the gameplay of it.
I won't be going back to finish up Sword of Mana. I might go back and play Final Fantasy Adventure, or if I can get my hands on a copy of Adventure of Mana, I might finish it up that way.
I won't even think about the game again, I think. I'll purge it from my memory.
Honesty, what a quality.
Yeah, I'll probably nick a bottle of vodka or something just so I can wipe out that period of my life from my memory. Right, okay. Well, that game's over and done with, so I think we'll take a break and we'll move on to Ryan's pick.
My pick for our handheld was James Bond 007. It was released in 1998, so actually really late, especially because by this time I believe GoldenEye had come out, or maybe it was just about to come out.
Really? Yeah, because I mean, I think GoldenEye came out. Well, Perfect Dark came out in 2000, so 1998 seems about right for GoldenEye. Maybe 97.
Now I want to look that up really quick, just to make sure.
But yeah, that was quite late. I mean, when did the Game Boy Advance come out? Because the DS was 2005, so the GBA must have been around that time, no?
I want to say the Game Boy Advance came out, or the Game Boy, I want to say the Game Boy Color came out in 98 or 99.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, GoldenEye released in August 1997, so this actually came out over a year after GoldenEye, which kind of makes sense because at that point you have a bit of the James Bond fever going on.
Yeah.
but it was a really bizarre game overall because it didn't follow the plot of a movie like most of the 007 games did. It rather just sort of created a James Bond Elseworld where you fought basically all of the Bond villains at the time.
Yeah, it's basically like a bunch of mini missions.
Yeah, it's just a really bizarre game, but it has sort of a Legend of Zelda-esque system to it. But it's not one big overworld. It drops you into sort of like missions. You have to solve this area and move on, and then it progresses the story on to the next zone. And it kind of brings you all, it's cool because it brings you all over the world and whatnot, but it's just kind of an odd one.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I say it does kind of fit in with Zelda in that kind of style of gameplay, but in like these really condensed areas. So like these worlds will be in condensed Zelda-like worlds. That kind of exploration, those kind of puzzles, and then you move on to the next one. It's a very interesting style.
Visually, it's not much to talk about. It is a Game Boy game.
Yeah.
When I first booted it up, I was really surprised because I thought, wow, they've managed to turn James Bond into a top-down RPG. This is going to be terrible. It turned out not really to be an RPG, but it did have that kind of visual style that a lot of RPGs have. And it surprised me by actually being quite engaging and decent to play.
It's a very unique style for a James Bond game. I don't think I've ever seen any James Bond game that's even been similar to this style.
No.
As you say, like I kind of thought this could be a little bit iffy, but as soon as I started it, I fell in love with it pretty quickly.
I think I got this game, my mom had left. She had gone out of town. She came back and she had stopped in a game shop and just gotten a handful of Game Boy games. And this was probably 2002 or 3 when this happened. And this was in that collection, and I sat down and played it. And at the time, I honestly loved it. And going back, I don't think it's as great, but I still think it has some value here.
I think it can be a little bit convoluted with its puzzles, and some of them in a not very fair way. Like, for example, one of the first things that I had problems with was finding particular items. So you search like these beds and whatever, but you actually have to search a specific side of the bed in order to find the item. And it kind of feels like, hang on a second. And there's another level which I don't remember where it is. Maybe Istanbul or something. But there's these underground tunnels that you have to navigate.
Was that Kurdistan?
Could have been Kurdistan. It was some foreign country. But you had to navigate these underground tunnels and find your way into the black market. And I just kind of got a bit lost with that.
I've beaten this game 4 times and I get lost every single time.
There are a couple levels like that quite late in the game that just turn into giant mazes, which it does seem to be there to artificially lengthen the game time, I think. If you're going to be cynical about it, it seems to me to be there to just extend the game a little bit, because it is a fairly short game otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of think the game is probably stronger in the first half, while it, concentrates more on the charm. And then in the second half, when it does go into that maze-like structure, that's when it starts to kind of annoy you a bit.
The enemy base, the last level, that is just huge, and all the corridors look the same, and you just do not know where to go at all.
No, you just wander around for like 40 minutes until you figure out where you need to go. Or rather, stumble into where you're supposed to be.
But yeah, some of the puzzles, though, are quite cool. Like, there's one early on where you have to get fake documentation. So you've got to get this guy, like, some paper and a pen, and then distracts the guard while he makes it for you. Like these forged identity papers.
It wasn't a bad thought-out game. It's just weird. It's my pick, and I can only say that. It's just kind of a weird game.
I did definitely need a walkthrough for some of those puzzles.
Yeah, definitely. As I say, it kind of does get a bit unfair in how convoluted it can be at times.
Not even convoluted, just obtuse.
Yeah, just kind of out there, like you wouldn't really know unless you're doing it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's as bad as, say, the original Legend of Zelda.
No.
It's something you probably could figure out if you spent time and just you sat at the level and you were basically just doing everything until you solved it.
And that's exactly what I had to do, because back in the day, I lived in Bush, Alaska, and we didn't really have decent internet.
Yeah.
So I just sort of had to muscle my way through the game the first couple times.
Yeah, I still think it's definitely doable if you had time and patience. But I do think you would be forgiven for using a walkthrough to help guide you. I quite like the weapons in the game as well, though.
I took notice when I was playing through that, like, you get, because you like get a machine gun and you get a pistol and
A machete.
yeah, but then you get the machete and you just hack the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, I just pretty much use the machete for everything, to be honest.
Probably
Like,
the best item.
Yeah. I mean, the first level, you end up having to use your fists,
Mhm.
and that's not the best, because you have to
No.
fight like an absolute tons of guys with these fists, and it's the same strategy, just block, punch, for forever until they die, and then you go on to the next guy, and then the next level you pick up a machete, and it's like, okay, good to go.
I like this.
I was well over halfway through the game before I found out that you can actually put something else in your block item slot.
Yeah, do you know that? Yeah. I always used to have a weapon and then change the block one to the miscellaneous items.
It seems weird, though, that if you, say, put on a vest, James Bond will suddenly forget how to block.
Right. It's just bulky. It's really bulky. It's like one of those big padded jackets.
Although,
It's
to
not
be fair,
heavy.
those vests do make you immune to gunfire, pretty much.
Yeah, you basically become invincible. It's like the, what do they call them? The bear suits that they use for, like, martial arts demos. They pad the guy up and he can just take a beating.
He can take an explosion in that vest.
Oh, yeah, literally,
it's
like,
pretty useful.
at one point you're just eating rockets like muffins and just whatever. Throw it up and kill a dude, doesn't matter. What's a missile?
So how far did you all get in the game? I mean, I assume you've been it, Ryan.
I've beaten it a few times.
Yeah, I finished it.
What did you
The-
think of the ending?
Were you, like, in the boat? And, what is it? She says something like, some romantic, let's
Yeah, it's-
spend long on this boat, kind of thing.
Yeah, he's basically taking her back to China or something on
Yeah.
the boat. Slow boat to China.
It's typical James Bond wish fulfillment fantasy kind of ending, really.
Yeah.
But fitting.
The last boss, though, was actually not as difficult as Oddjob. I found Oddjob to be the most difficult boss, mainly because I didn't know what to do at first.
Yeah,
but
that's...
the final
Yeah,
boss, I
I
actually
suppose
found a
it
bit of a pushover.
And Oddjob's a piece of cake once you understand, oh, I just bounce that shit back. But
Yeah.
if you don't know, you just stand there and die a couple times. But yeah, when it boils down, you're so well armed for the final boss, you just sort of mow him over.
Yeah.
Jaws was a piece of piss as well.
Oh, that's because you can't damage him directly. You have to knock him into the wall.
Yeah. Some of the bosses were quite interesting in this. Like, you know, some of them weren't particularly difficult, but they had nice little gimmicks to make them just a bit more than killing them.
Yeah, versus just them being a damaged sponge. There was a trick to beating them, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, like there was one where you had to throw like, I don't know, you throw like a thing on the floor and then they step onto it and they get stunned for a bit and then you go up in it and for a
Yeah,
bit.
that's Jaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that Jaws?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if Jaws gets his hands on you, he messes you up.
Yeah, yeah. You've pretty much just got to keep away as much as possible and try and stun him. But yeah, it was a neat little game. I found it had like a lot of charm to it, and I'd say despite some of the problems, I'd still list it in, you know, one of the better James Bond games.
Right.
I mean, not as good as, say, like GoldenEye or World Is Not Enough, but still better than Nightfire.
I enjoyed it more than GoldenEye.
Oh, really?
Really?
To be fair, though, I can appreciate that. I think if you prefer the genre of James Bond 007, then, you know, a first-person shooter, then I could definitely see that. I think, depending on how you stand with the genres, you know, it would be a fair call.
I quite enjoyed the music as well. They're all variations on the Bond theme, and they're all quite well done, I thought. The only trouble is, when you go between screens and when there's a lot of enemies on the screen, the music will slow down a bit.
I mean, it was on a Game Boy. You have to cut a little slack here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really, this was on a Game Boy, and I think that it did the music better than Sword of Mana,
Yeah.
and that was on Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
I think it's more because it wasn't trying to be like a big music score, but almost be like kind of an ambient score. You're not sitting there trying to take in the music as you chop people up with a machete.
Yeah, because I've never seen James Bond mow people down with a machete before.
I don't think he ever has. Like, not even in the Daniel Craig movies.
Yeah, not even in Timothy Dalton.
In the Sean Connery movies, he mowed you down with his eyes, but...
Yeah, true. But yeah, it was a nice little game. I was quite surprised because when you said it was a James Bond game on the Game Boy, I kind of thought Ryan's going to pick a shit game. I'm going to have to sit through this crap. But yeah, it was good. I'm actually pleasantly surprised by your pick this month, Ryan. Well done. Keep doing good picks like that.
I'm trying, man. I have a lot of sin to make up for TMNT.
Yeah, you're not joking.
I got this handy Neo Geo Pocket Color here, and
yeah, switch it on. Let's see what Steven has to say about it.
let's see what Steve's got to say here.
James Bond 007 was kind of interesting for me because I'd never heard of it before, and it was surprisingly good. I actually really enjoyed the exploration-based gameplay. The combat was fine. It just really was a lot better than I expected, and I'm definitely glad I played it. I didn't get all the way through it just because I didn't have a ton of time this month, but yeah, it was just a very good game.
Thanks, Steven. Put you away now.
Yeah, preserve the battery power of the Neo Geo.
My challenge for the game was to figure out the rules to Baccarat in the casino without looking them up.
Actually, your challenge was specifically without looking up on Google.
Well, you want to play that, but Googling it, sir, don't use the internet, essentially. What I didn't realize, even though I've played this game several times, is there is someone in the casino who explains the rules to you. And that makes me mad because I had to figure that game out when I was playing it when I didn't really have access to the internet. So, yeah, whoops.
Well, I managed to get through it quite easily. I ended up just betting big and just going for it. And then after a few times, the guy just appeared. So I didn't even need to learn it. However, I did find out the rules, and I used Bing.
Yeah.
So I didn't use Google, but I won't take the point for this. I do realize I was trying to overcome your challenge by cheating a little. But yeah, I realized that there was a guy there, but by that point it was too late. I'd already cheated.
Yeah, I never knew. What about you, Matt? Did you figure it out, or did you talk to the guy?
I talked to the guy. I mean, I was perfectly willing to go in and just kind of like wing it and find it out for myself. But I was talking to everyone in the casino first, and this guy just said, "Here's how you play Baccarat."
Well, I would say that counts. He didn't look anything up.
He didn't look anything up. That was, he didn't use the internet, and I didn't know, so I would say that Matt got the point there, even though...
Well, I would say it's similar to my Symphony of Night challenge, where I forgot about the circlet that makes you invincible to electric.
Right.
Just an oversight, I suppose.
Which, I don't know if I had beaten that boss by the time we got around to recording, but I did go back and I did beat that boss without basically using a completely different build.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty tough, isn't it?
No, yeah, it was where I died like 8 or 9 times until I finally figured out his pattern and a method. Turns out you can use the power of mist to get between his legs during one of his attacks, and you can just hack away at him.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a different game.
Yeah.
We're talking about handheld games now.
Yeah. Simply not handheld.
Yeah.
But I did get that challenge. Just too late. So.
Right, so anyway, James Bond, I would say, pretty good game. I think you two agree, no?
Yeah, definitely.
I give it a 00 out of 7.
Yeah. I give it a 00 out of 8. I give it a Sean Bean. Who's actually in this game as well?
Yeah, 008 is. Sean Bean isn't.
No, but it's 008, which is basically Sean Bean.
Because he died?
Yeah, he died. Maybe this was before GoldenEye. I don't know the timeline. Right, so we'll cut away, and then next we'll have a look at my pick. So my pick for this month is GG Shinobi 2 with the Silent Fury. As you guys are probably aware, the Shinobi series was quite a big franchise for Sega back in the day. So, it's kind of natural that Game Gear is going to get a title. Yeah, anyway, this one's weird because normally with Game Gear games, they just port the Master System version over to the Game Gear. But this one was actually like a brand new game, unique game mechanics and everything. It sold pretty well, so obviously you got a second game, which is where this game comes in. This one was released back in 1992, I think it was. It got pretty good reviews as well, from what I remember seeing in the magazines. I think there's been like a few rankings as well. It's been on like either top Game Gear games or just top handheld games or something. But either way, like the other Shinobi games, it's a platforming game. But unlike the main series, you control like Joe Musashi as normal, but you have to rescue 4 other ninjas. So there are 4 main stages, and you go through, beat the boss, and you unlock the ninja. And, like with Mega Man, you can play them in any order. But it's not like Mega Man where you pick up a weapon and there's boss weaknesses and stuff. It's literally just, here are 4 stages, just do what you want. So they still have like unique weapons and abilities and stuff, these ninjas, which is why you want to use them. Like the blue one, for example, has got a grappling hook type thing. So you can hit enemies from a distance or swing across stuff. You could turn into like a tornado as well. Pink ninja can walk on the ceiling. The yellow can walk on water. Stuff like that. And when you revisit the levels, you can use those to access like new areas. And then you'll find the 4 crystals and, get to the last, the last stage. It's quite a cool little mechanic for a platforming game, and because you can choose whatever stage you want, it kind of adds a fair bit of replayability. And yeah, I used to play this game loads as a child, and yeah, it's probably my favourite Game Gear game. So, what did you guys make of it?
I didn't finish it like I wanted to. I'm going to go back and finish it. I believe I unlocked the yellow ninja, and then my Mac exploded.
All right. Fair enough.
So not my fault, but yeah, I think I had just unlocked the yellow ninja. I had been going back and cruise. I spent a lot of time going back in the levels with the other ninjas to see what's going on.
So did you get all the ninjas apart from the yellow ninja?
No, I didn't.
Oh, right, okay.
But I thought the way they executed the different powers was very neat. I thought the your main ninja, the white ninja, was kind of terrible.
I actually use him quite a fair bit. I probably use him the most apart from the blue ninja. I find his sword just be quite reliable because it deals a fair amount of damage.
But his special ability is just... I realize it's just a teleport to the checkpoint, but still, it's
basically
useless.
A shortcut.
The one thing I didn't really like straight up was that you get you pick up, I'm assuming they're supposed to be scrolls.
Yeah, for the ninja powers?
Yeah, that allows you the ninja power, and then it's gone. You have to go find another one.
You can pick up multiple ones, though. I think you can pick up a maximum of 2 or 3 or something, maybe 3.
But it usually what I was finding is it usually takes a scroll to get to an area where there's, like, they keep you on a pretty tight leash with the number of scrolls you have on you.
Yeah, I think normally when you get into the other bits to get the crystals, they're a bit more forgiving with scrolls because that's when you actually need the abilities. So I think it dishes out a bunch when you need them, and when you don't, it's just like whenever. But yeah, you're right.
But I thought it was a lot of fun with just the way that it was, they dealt out the powers.
What's
overall.
quite interesting as well is when you go like into these new areas where you have to find the crystals, there's usually more than one way to get a crystal. So you're not just using one ninja's power. Mm-hmm. You can theoretically use maybe a couple of different ninjas, and it allows for a bit of experimentation and just allows you to do what you think's best.
I do like when you go in there, like on your title selected, before you've even beaten an area, the area shows the ninja and the crystal.
Yeah.
And then
so
when
you can
finish,
see what you've done.
And then when you finish the area, the ninja goes away because you've beaten the boss, and then it shows the crystal.
Yeah.
Well, when you start in there, it shows the crystal. It goes, oh, you're in the canyon, and the pink crystal is hidden here. Then you go get your pink crystal, or I think it's the blue actually. You go get the ninja, and he's like, oh, where's the blue crystal? It's got to be around here somewhere. It's like, I really think that we forgot already.
Well, yeah.
But I did like how it's like, oh, the level is really short and straightforward, but it's going back and finding everything. Well, finding the crystal, that all the gameplay really comes into effect.
Yeah, they're quite compact levels, and probably the extra areas are maybe the same size again for another level, so it effectively doubles the level size. But then when you get to the final stage is like this massive gauntlet of challenge rooms, and I would say that the final stage is probably the length of the other 4 stages combined. So it's pretty sizable. Even though the game seems like quite a short game, it's not quite as short as you think it is.
Right.
And I think having those bite-sized chunks do help as well, because you got these bite-sized chunks of unlocking ninjas and crystals, and then you get passwords after every one, so you can get the password and then continue another time. So I think they've managed, as a handheld title quite well. No, I suppose much like James Bond as well, because the levels there are quite small, which again fit quite well to the handheld format.
And I think that that's probably just a lot of what is. I mean, it's a handheld. It's not. Handhelds are not meant to have, or you'll find in a lot of games where handhelds aren't meant to be like these long, drawn out things. They're kind of meant to be It's kind of meant to pick up, play for a little bit, and then go. Yeah, and then stop, because they don't have infinite battery life. They don't have,
Well, this was for the Game Gear, so it definitely didn't have infinite battery life.
Right.
But what did you think about the difficulty from what you've played?
I felt the difficulty was inconsistent. There were a couple times where, like, the enemy pops up and you just don't have time to react and you have to take the hit. And they're generous with health drops, but you just sort of have to eat the damage, and then if you end up dying or backtracking or whatever happens, now you just sort of have to remember that the enemy's there, and then And a couple areas, it felt like I had to take a couple steps forward, take a couple steps forward, and basically just be careful about enemies popping out of the ground or jumping in from off screen or falling from the ceiling.
Yeah, I get that.
And it felt a little unfair overall, and it's a shame because I really liked the level designs. Yeah. And instead I had to inch through them for the sake of, because that's just how they had to make the game difficult, was kind of push it just a little unfair at times.
It's weird because, I get where you're coming from. I don't really have problems like that because I know where the enemies are going to pop up. And as such, I find that the 4 stages are quite simple. And, because the actual level designs are quite simple from a platforming point of view. But then I say the difficulty lies in where the enemies pop up. Once you know where they're going to pop up, that kind of takes the challenge away. So yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, that would be the difficult part. For me, the difficulty ramps up for the final stage, and then the other stages are quite straightforward. Because in the final stage, apart from like the bosses, there's no enemies. So, it makes the platforming really difficult. And obviously the enemies are non-existent. Whereas in the main game with the 4 stages, the actual platforming is quite simple, and then the enemies are more difficult.
I think the platforming in the final stage is too difficult, personally. I spent a long time trying to get through some of those rooms, and some of them you've kind of got to almost cheat in a way to get across them. There's one where you have 2 layers of platforms. One's going slow, one's going fast. I kind of felt that I had to try and get on a couple platforms and then jump into midair, pause the game.
Is that the one where you've got to be the pink ninja and attach yourself to the roof and drop back down and go up and down?
I think that's a different one. What I had to do was kind of like jump as far forward as I could, pause, go to the Blue Ninja's tornado thing, get as far as I could, and then just as he's dropping down, as long as I've got kind of like another power-up available, pause again, and then activate his ability again to get across the room, which kind of felt like it was cheating, sort of. And I don't think that that's the way you meant to do it.
I know there is a room where you do have to do that, but I'm not sure if it's that room, because I'm not entirely sure which one you're talking about. One thing, though, that you might not have picked up on, because it's not something I picked up on straight away, is that the background of the rooms are different colours. And if the background is green, you use the green ninja. If it's red, you use the red ninja, and so on. So that kind of gives you an indication of what you've got to do. So if it's blue, then it's like, oh, this you use the blue ninja. So if the background stat level is blue, then probably you did have to use a tornado.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I didn't notice for like the longest time, and then I was like, oh shit, of course. It's actually pretty obvious when you think about it.
That's what we refer to in the industry as clever game design.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem with that final level is that final level is very typical for a final level in a Shinobi game. But because this isn't like a typical Shinobi game, I think that the difficulty is kind of pitched a little bit too high, because normally in a Shinobi games are quite difficult, especially like the platforming and everything, whereas this game is a bit more straightforward. So it seems to have a bit more of a difficulty spike. I think that the rooms are all designed quite well, and I think that the challenge rooms are quite interesting in design and quite fun to work out, but it is very, very difficult, especially if you're doing it all in one run, because there's no checkpoints or anything like that. It's just you do it until you have to continue.
See, I didn't get to the final level, but I will say the boss in the, I guess it'd be the canyon where you get the blue ninja.
Yeah. Is that the armadillo?
Yeah, the armadillo pissed me right the fuck off.
Really? I think he's so straightforward.
I found him probably the easiest boss out of all of them.
Because he does like a little shake when he's going to jump, and then like he doesn't shake when he rolls.
But his the one thing that got me is he doesn't have a pattern, he just has indicators. And it was annoying because I was expecting kind of a patterny thing like in a Mega Man game, because that's what the feel I was getting right away was kind of a Mega Man vibe, but not quite.
Yeah,
and when he drops in, you hack away at him. The first thing he does is he does a roll. He rolls at you, and you jump over him. You hack away at him the second time, and he does a bounce.
Yeah.
And what he does, he rolls and he rolls flat across the stage, and then he shoots spikes at an angle. Then he jumps in an arc and he shoots spikes flat. After that, it's complete RNG. They established a pattern immediately where you could potentially take damage but still survive. And then after that, they went, there actually isn't a pattern. It's only indicators. And I basically instantly sort of conditioned to that there was going to be a pattern, and there was none.
I mean, there is, as I say, you've got indicators, so I think it's kind of fair enough to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only really one boss where I take damage from. So I think it's definitely something you can learn once you know what to look for.
Yeah, and that's what it boiled down to. Was they established a pattern,
and you thought it was going to be a pattern instead.
And then they established a pattern, and then they went, actually, no, there isn't one at all. Like he can bounce infinitely after that. He can just do nothing but bounces and shoot flat. He can shoot at angles and bounce. He can do whatever he wants to, and you have to just look for the cue.
Yeah.
Versus the next boss that I fought right after that was the next one after was the worm, and he doesn't have a pattern per se. He just goes, I'm going to dig up and down through the ceiling. You have a couple opportunities to hit me. I set a bomb off.
Yeah.
But he doesn't necessarily start at one end of the screen and move all the way to the other. He can kind of start in the middle. He can start at the far end. He can start wherever he needs to and end wherever he needs to.
But he's quite easy to avoid because he's like...
he's super easy to avoid. He was so easy to kill.
For me, like, the only one that's difficult is the scorpion one, as I say. The others are quite straightforward. What do you think, Matt? Did you have much problem with the bosses?
I had a problem with the mech boss. I just couldn't not
Is that
take
the
damage on that
scorpion
fight.
one, the one that divides himself into pieces?
Yes,
Yeah, that's the one that I think's the hardest too.
I really struggled with that. But like I said, the armadillo one I found really quite easy. And I don't know if you noticed, but it's the Metal Sonic fight. Like it is identical to the Metal Sonic fight. You've got Spike shooting out, he'll jump up or roll along the floor, and same fight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually. And it's a Sega franchise, so they probably did just recycle it. I never even thought about that before, but yeah.
Hey, whatever works.
But yes, so you've got the scorpion mech thing, you've got the armadillo, you've got the worm, and then I don't know whether you saw the other one, the spider. Did you see that one, Ryan?
I don't think that was the yellow ninja.
I can't remember which ninja it's for, but it's a spider that crawls across the ceiling, and it can either fire bullets out from the side or drop a bomb.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
So, but overall, I thought the game was pretty solid. I want to go back and finish it, but I have to get the ROM or just buy a physical copy of the game. I might do that when I get my hands on a Game Gear.
Well, I mean, that's the problem with the game. I mean, the game's not that expensive to pick up. It only costs you like maybe 20 quid complete in box, but it's only available on the Game Gear. They've never re-released it. So it's a shame because they have released, I think the first one is available on the 3DS eShop. I don't know if it's on the Wii as well, but they've re-released the first one, but not the second one. You know, the first one is still a good game, but the second one is just far better, in my opinion.
Yeah, when we first started this, I was accidentally playing the first Game Gear Shinobi.
Were you playing the first GG Shinobi, or were you playing the Master System one?
I was playing the first Game Gear.
Ah, okay.
And
oh, yeah, you were, weren't you?
And I was really confused what you were talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is a solid game. I do quite like that game, but for me, it just doesn't have the same zing to it.
Mm-hmm. I'd also like to throw in real quick that I was really digging the music.
Oh, yeah, I was just about to mention the music is really good.
Absolutely fantastic. Again, especially since we're talking about portables where there's often a limit of power.
I particularly like the boss music. Like, just thinking about the boss music, I get it stuck in my head. But it's neat. As I say, it kind of takes that Mega Man formula of choosing your own level and having, you know, these ninjas with different abilities, but it doesn't really do it in the same way that Mega Man does and does its own thing with it. Mm-hmm. And in that respect, it's sort of like a Metroidvania Mega Man type thing, because you're more using it to advance through the levels.
Well, yeah, and it kind of did a TMNT thing where you have the different turtles, except it actually made them super unique and way more useful versus them just having a different colored headband.
Yeah. But the thing is as well, there's like loads of hidden things, because you've got the crystals, but then you can also get health upgrades as well. I mean, that leads us nicely into our challenge. You know, the challenge was to find all 4 health upgrades, which are hidden throughout the levels. Did you guys find any of them?
I didn't find one.
I only found one.
Yeah, they're in the crystal areas, but some of them are quite, you know, tricky to get to. Like, I don't know if you remember the one in the factory, which I think is the Pink Ninjas area. But there's an area where that's completely dark. And in that section, you kind of have to use the Blue Ninja's tornado and the grappling hook thing in order to navigate through this maze of pipes, basically. And then at the end, you can find the health upgrade. I think that's also where you find the pink crystal too. But the health upgrade's like in a completely different place, and it's quite difficult to get to.
No, I definitely need to go back and play through some more.
Yeah, I'd say like it's quite interesting to play, especially for like the final set of levels, because the game just kind of flips itself completely and becomes like this quite intense platformer with all these puzzle rooms. But it's definitely worth playing through to the end. I think the final boss is a little bit of a letdown. Otherwise, I think the final level is quite satisfying to play through. Right, well, I think it's time to turn on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, Ryan. If you want to switch it on, we'll see what Stephen has to say about the game.
All right.
I don't really have too much to say about Shinobi. I'm glad that it lets you choose from any level so that I can play through each of them and get to see most of the content, even though I can't beat any of the bosses. I do like that you get special abilities with each boss you defeat, and then need to go back into the levels to use those to actually obtain the crystals. I actually liked that mechanic. It did lead to dying a few times when I came across something that I couldn't do because I didn't have the ability for it. Overall, I thought it was okay. I'm not really clamoring to play it again, but it's definitely not the worst thing I've been introduced to by this podcast.
All right, thanks, Stephen, for your input. So we'll take another break and we'll lead on to the final game for this month, which is Matt's pick.
My pick for this month is Mario Kart DS. It came out in 2005 and is the fifth Mario Kart game, following Super Mario Kart, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Mario Kart 64, and Mario Kart Double Dash. This came out at kind of a break point for retro gaming because it is on a console that kind of straddled the line between two generations, where it came out during the life cycle of the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, but it carried on and had its most success during the lifespan of the PS3 and the Xbox 360. So it is kind of on the edge there, which we are going to discuss shortly. But in terms of Mario Kart, it's kind of more of the same thing. It's more of an iteration on previous versions than it is a whole new game. You've got a bunch of tracks from the other games as well, which are actually probably the most fun tracks in the game. There are a bunch of additional characters that you can unlock as well, including Rob the Robot, which is quite a fun little character. And if you're looking for a fun game to take with you on the go, then it's certainly a lot of fun, but it isn't really the best Mario Kart game there is. What do you guys think of it?
So I want to do a quick correction on you. It is actually the sixth Mario Kart game. If we're being technical here, Mario Kart GP, the arcade game, actually came out about a month or before this.
Does that count in the main series? Because obviously the latest one is 8. So were there 2 after Mario Kart DS, or were there 3 after? 7 came out on the 3DS, was it? Then you've got Wii, and obviously Mario Kart 8. I don't know how the numbering works. There just seems to be like a million Mario Karts.
And if you look at the box of Mario Kart, it's actually like Mario Kart Infinity, so at this point, who really cares?
I'd also like to correct something else that Matt said about this not being the best Mario Kart. I would go as far as to say it's exactly the same as every other Mario Kart, so it's neither better nor worse.
See, and I'm going to have to offer a third opinion here where I feel it's actually one of the best Mario Karts. It has one of the best balances of weapons. It offers versus, for like the RNG of what you're going to get, it gives you one of the best balances of the weapons versus past this started the blue shell storm that we know and love today in Mario Kart games.
You also get, as well as the unlockable characters, which are quite cool, you've also got unlockable vehicles as well.
Mm-hmm. They carried that over from Double Dash and dumped a whole bunch of unlockable carts that all had different stats and looked really cool too. Like Waluigi has one that's like a trike, and
the Dry Bones character, which is the one that I favoured in this, he gets a tank.
Yeah, he gets a tank. How badass is that?
That is pretty cool. I mean, normally in Mario Kart games, I play as Peach because I quite like the lightweight class of vehicle, and for some reason I just can't play with Toad. However, in this one, I went with Dry Bones because I've never played as Dry Bones in a Mario game before. I know he's in Mario Kart 8, but I think he was added as DLC later. So when I got it on the Wii U, I never actually played as Dry Bones. So yeah, I gave him a shot, and he's pretty good. He accelerates pretty fast.
Yeah, it's good. He
So
has
that's-
pretty balanced stats. It's nice.
Yeah. He's got
I think
great acceleration. That's quite useful for me because I keep crashing into things. So I need
think
the acceleration.
I think Dry Bones is technically on the bottom of the middle weight classes. Like he's the lightest of the middle weights.
Yeah. I don't know where he classes. I don't know card classes.
Rob is a heavy class, just like Wario and Donkey Kong.
Bowser, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose he's a big robot.
I very much enjoyed how the game felt because previous, like if you go Super Circuit, 64, Super Mario Kart, it was quite apparent that you kind of steered from the back. Steering felt odd compared to every other racer because you just sort of pivoted slowly as you turned. That was the mechanic they used. Whereas here and in Double Dash is when the Mario Kart franchise moved forward that they actually steer like real cars. In as much as the front wheels turn and the car follows the front wheels.
That is true. They did move a bit more like real cars compared to other Mario games.
As real as you can get, sliding around at
For
80
a
miles an
Mario
hour.
Kart game.
Yeah.
However, I kind of think that does lead on to one of the sore points that I have. The controls aren't the best. I mean, it's not necessarily that the controls are bad, it's just that controlling it on a DS isn't the best. My hands started to hurt after a while, and with the trigger buttons, I couldn't really do the power sliding properly, the drifting.
It is kind of awkward to hold, and when you have to keep your finger on the accelerator, or your thumb rather, it just starts to ache after, like, maybe a few laps.
Yeah, it does. I couldn't do more than like one set of 4 tracks, one Grand Prix, I suppose, at a time, and then just have like a rest and then do another one another time.
Although I had that exact same problem with the Wii U, with Mario Kart 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my hands started to cramp with that horrible controller that the Wii U had. Not the Pro controller, the tablet.
Yeah. That wasn't the best. People loved that for some reason. And I was just like, this kind of feels wrong to play games.
Yeah, I much appreciated the Pro controller when I got one.
Yeah. But then again, people say like that the Switch Joy-Cons aren't very comfortable to use, but for me they're fine. Unless you're using it as a single Joy-Con, which is just wrong.
Did anybody jump into the battle mode? Or not the battle mode, the challenges, the missions?
No, I didn't.
Because I saw them and I thought, that's interesting. And I never once went back to them.
Yeah, no, I've gone through and beaten them all, but like there's a lot of fun stuff. Like there's some like you have to race King Goomba, or you have to beat a bully from Super Mario 64, or one of them is I think you have to drive backwards down DK Mountain through rings in a certain amount of time, and you're driving in reverse the whole time, and it just throws a lot of fun stuff at you.
Yeah, I'm looking at them now. They look pretty good. Honestly, that's kind of up to my opinion of this game a little bit more, because one of the big problems I have with Mario Kart games is that they tend to recycle the course themes, and usually they feel mostly the same. Then they throw in a few, new tracks, and then call it a day. Mm-hmm. And there's not really much in terms of additional content. But this mission mode, it seems, from what I can see, to be pretty good. I mean, it reminds me of the event matches from Smash Brothers Melee, if you've ever played that game. And yeah, I'm quite impressed, because normally there's no other single player content other than the Grand Prix in Mario Kart games. I always find that disappointing.
That was another neat thing that Mario Kart DS did, was it allowed you to go into battle mode against all the CPUs.
All right.
So you could have up to, I believe it was 8 people on these battle maps, but you didn't have to link up with friends to play battle mode.
All right, that's cool.
So that was kind of nice too. Like they put a lot more thought into Mario Kart DS than really a lot of the other Mario Kart games got, and that's kind of sad because, I think we've had 3 since then.
I would say that looking at the content, comparing it to the other Mario Kart games I've played, it's probably got the most in terms of actual content, which is a shame because you have to play it on a DS, which, as I mentioned before, I don't think racing on that control's probably the best thing.
The one last little gimmicky thing it threw in there was you can make your own emblem to put on your card.
Yeah, it tried to get me to do that, and I was just like, nah, I don't want to do that. Bye.
I've always loved doing the Grand Prix in all of the Mario Kart games. I've always hated battle mode. I just never go into it. I just hate the way it controls. I hate the way it plays. So Grand Prix is kind of the only thing I really play when I play Mario Kart, which is why I've not tried out like the mission section, stuff like that. And in terms of the Grand Prix, there are definitely a lot of innovations with this particular version of the game. Probably not enough to set it apart. And I have to say, in terms of track design, it says a lot that best tracks in the game are the ones that they recycle from older Mario Kart games.
I'm not sure about that. I like quite some of the new ones as well. Like one of the ones that we did for the challenge, was it Wario Pinball or whatever it was?
Waluigi.
Yeah, I quite like the design of that one as well, because it's like an actual pinball machine. Like you've got all these balls flying around the place and stuff. I mean, it's not as kind of inventive as I suppose it could be. They could have done a lot more with it, but I still thought it was quite a nice, neat little design.
It does have like those handful of gimmicky levels, which do give you that kind of variety, but I kind of feel that 8 kind of mastered those gimmicky levels in a way that towers over the attempts in this particular version.
I'm not too sure about that. I kind of think it probably does a little bit more with it, but, the Switch has got more power, and, well, I suppose the Wii U, has got more power to do more things with it. But I think given the hardware it was on, it does quite a fair amount, and I would say that the levels are pretty decent. Not spectacular, not the best, but still all right.
I thought the design was really solid for the courses. I did like that DK Pass, which was, they recycled that idea a couple times, driving down a mountain. They did it for Mario Kart 8. They did it in Mario Kart Wii, I believe, as well. Mario Kart 7 got one, driving through kind of like driving up or down a mountain.
Yeah.
Waluigi Pinball is obviously just a really fun, colorful, flashy stage. With
Delfino Plaza as well, which is quite cool.
Yeah, because you're like weaving through the town.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun too.
But I think that's recycled from the GameCube one, wasn't it?
No, it was not.
Wasn't there like Peach Beach or something? Is that Peach Beach I'm thinking of then? I'm sure there was one that was like a beachy type thing in Double Dash.
One of them had that idea where you did kind of, I think it was Peach Beach. Because, there was... I
know there was one level that looked like Sunshine.
Yeah, because there's Peach Beach, and then in the course Peach Beach, if you look out on the ocean, you can see the Daisy Cruiser, which is its own track.
Ah, okay.
Which was kind of a nice little self-reference within the game. I very much enjoyed the Rainbow Road for DS. It's one of my favorite Rainbow Roads.
I'd agree with that, actually. It is, I like the loops and stuff like that it's going on.
It's got a big loop. It has, like, the big windy ribbon parts with no railings on it, where it's like, if you're... It's a good test of skill.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is good because it's the 16th track, so...
And, like, Rainbow Road's supposed to be, like, the ultimate track in Mario Kart games.
Mm-hmm.
So who did you all play as?
Peach.
I'm trying to remember who I played as for the challenge. I went for a very specific build, but generally speaking, I would play as Daisy and I would run the Wario trike.
Nice. Yeah, for me, as I say, I did dry bones on this one, but I started as Peach until I unlocked it. It was a fun game.
I do prefer Mario Kart 64, like a hell of a lot over this, but the portability of this is kind of what appeals to me, and the fact that ever since I got a 3DS, this game has never actually left it. Like, literally, I've never taken the cartridge out of this 3DS for years. It tells you a lot about how much I do enjoy playing this game on the go. But when I get home, there are better Mario Kart games that I can play on the TV.
You know what? I would say that this may be one of my favourite Mario Kart games, but to be honest, I'm not a particularly massive fan of the series. I think what holds this one back is probably the fact that it's on the DS. If it was on any other console, I'd probably like it a hell of a lot more because I'd be able to play it for longer periods of time.
Is the control on the DS any different to the 3DS? Because I actually played on 3DS and I found it uncomfortable.
The 3DS I find more comfortable to hold than the DS, but I don't think it's going to be that different.
As far as the 3DS is just more comfortable, just as a whole, because it's a little bit bigger. But when it comes down to like using the stick versus the pad, I actually played better using the D-pad because it doesn't have. There's no gradient on Mario Kart DS. You're either just going left or you're going right.
Yeah. Well, one other final thing to mention as well. I mean, we touched upon it briefly when you did your introduction to it. Being a DS game, would you consider this game retro? I mean, obviously, Matt, you do because it was your pick. But it's one of those kind of controversial picks, I suppose, for this show as a retro game.
Yeah, like I said, it does kind of straddle the line between two different generations. Although it does still technically lie within our kind of like cutoff date.
Yeah, I kind of think I think the 2005 cutoff date that we said, was that when the GameCube ended and transitioned to Wii? Yeah, I kind of think that like that point is a kind of an all right cutoff point for retro because I wouldn't consider the Wii retro. But then obviously you had the DS come out, just before then. Did it come out in 2004?
The DS came out, let me just have a look. Yes, 2004. And Mario Kart DS came out a year later in 2005.
Because it's weird, because I just can't think of the DS as a retro console. Because obviously we're on the 3DS now, and the DS is what basically came before that, essentially. I mean, I know you had stuff like the DS Lite and all the different variations and stuff in between, but effectively the DS was what came before 3DS, more or less.
But then also keep in mind that the DS, if it came out in 2004, that was 14 years ago, so...
I think it's just weird because like the DS and 3DS have had quite long life cycles. I think the new models and stuff drag them out a little bit longer, but...
They do. Because you had like the DSi and the DSi XL and the 3DS and the new 3DS.
But it's still weird because obviously with these long life cycles, I still consider the DS as generation, which is why I kind of struggle to think of it as a retro console. But, given the time it has been out, I guess, some of the games that came out, like in the earlier part, I suppose they are retro at this point.
I mean, 13, 14 years old. I think we can...
Yeah.
I think we can count that. I mean, when Mario Kart DS came out, I was 14, so...
I mean, most of the people I teach in my job weren't even born when this game came out.
Yeah.
So, I suppose it is retro.
When this came out, I was already starting to go bald. So that's fun to think about.
Yeah. Probably me too as well.
That's not retro for
I'll have
you,
been at university and that's when I was starting to worry about it. So, yeah. Same for me. In fact, I would say the DS is probably the reason I'm going bald. Because it happened at more or less the same time. So I find it's a good scapegoat.
Correlation is causation.
Exactly. Right, well, I think it's time to bring Stephen out again. Do you want to fish out the Neo Geo Pocket Color again?
I think how appropriate it would have been if he had gotten stuck in a DS here, but...
Never mind. Maybe next time he can get stuck in a DS.
All right, here we go. Let's get him out.
Okay.
With Mario Kart DS, you're basically getting what it says on the box. It's Mario Kart on the DS. One interesting thing about it is it was the first handheld Mario Kart that could be played online. That service is no longer available because the DS Online isn't available anymore. But there were some interesting things that you'd see on there. I know a friend of mine would come across players in Japan who would always play as Yoshi and had found a way to basically drift the entire race, so you would never, ever catch them. Me personally, I enjoy the game just fine. It's definitely not as good as the console versions, but it wasn't going to be. The track selection is fine. I like some of the unique ones. But yeah, it's just a generally good game, but it's not the best Mario Kart.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Hopefully by next month we'll have found a way to get you out of that Neo Geo Pocket Color and you can join us again. But for now, let's talk about the challenge that I set for this game, and that is to get the fastest time on Waluigi Pinball in time trial mode for one single lap, your best lap time. So, Adam, how did you do?
Not very well. I mean, I'm not very good at racing games, to be honest. I think apart from Beetle Adventure Racing on the N64, I can't really play any other racing game. I end up getting like 55 seconds. I think it was just like milliseconds above that. But yeah, about 55.
I managed to get 53, so not much better than your time. But again, I'm not actually that good at racing games, despite the amount of time that I've played this game. I'm not actually that great on it. Ryan, how did you do?
I cranked out about 47.5 seconds on my best lap.
Wow, bloody hell.
That is a lot better than either of us.
And I attribute that to having run time trials on Waluigi Pinball because it's one of my favorite courses just over and over and over in the past. So when I picked it up, it was just sort of like tapping into forgotten muscle memory.
So we didn't even stand a chance, really. Never mind. Well done. That's a pretty impressive time. I don't know what the record is for that level, but it doesn't seem too bad.
Knowing speedrunners, it's probably something stupid like 13 seconds. There'll be a glitch somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. Either there's a glitch and it's like 5 seconds, or there won't be a glitch and it's just skill.
And a lot of that's, I think I've tried to abuse any glitches, like jumping track, and the barriers are really tight. They don't let you fall off track on that course at all.
Yeah, I don't think there are any places where you could cut corners.
So apparently one of the best high scores out there, according to CyberScore, is the best lap time right now is 42.85.
So your time is actually pretty good compared to that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty decent.
Yeah, not bad. Well done. All right, well, now we've gone through all 4 games. It's time to take a little break and we'll discuss our favourite. All right, so those are the 4 games that we covered this time. We had the Sword of Mana, James Bond 007, Mario Kart DS, and GG Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury. Well, after playing those games, which was your favourite?
For me, despite the fact that I really kind of don't like the genre, I think Sword of Mana was my favourite out of the lot. I actually enjoyed all 3 of your guys' games this month, but Sword of Mana I think is the only one that I would probably go back to and spend a good deal more time with and try and finish off that story. For some reason it just really appealed to me.
What about you, Ryan?
I was kind of in a toss-up between Shinobi and Mario Kart DS, but I think there was just a couple of moments where Shinobi might have pissed me off a couple times too many.
Fair enough.
Just with just kind of some older game development ploys with like traps and whatnot.
Yeah.
That I'm going to have to toss it to Mario Kart DS.
Well, interestingly, we're going to have different picks because I'm going to go for James Bond 007. I mean, unlike Matt, I think Sword of Mana was probably the only one that I didn't like. But, Mario Kart DS I enjoyed a bit more than I expected. And obviously, as, you mentioned, Ryan, with the missions, it's actually got more depth than I actually even realised. But James Bond, though, I actually thought that would be terrible and, was surprisingly good.
Maybe that's why it's your pick, because you thought it was going to be bad and then it wasn't.
Well, I thought Mario Kart DS was going to be bad as well, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. But it was still essentially a Mario Kart game. And to be fair, I also thought with Sword of Mana that it was going to be bad, and it was actually bad. So, there we go. Well, no, it wasn't too bad. I'd say the combat wasn't too bad, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of just made me want to go play Secret of Mana instead of Sword of Mana.
Yeah, it just kind of makes me think I'm right in, hating RPGs. But there we go.
Steven, what's your opinion? What's your favorite game?
My favorite game for the month was James Bond 007.
Bye, Steven.
Bye.
You think I can get him out of there if I change the batteries?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe just plug it in.
Maybe if I change the cartridge. I wonder how much it's worth with him in there.
Yeah, just sell on eBay. I'm sure he'll come out in the transaction.
Haunted Neo Geo.
Yeah. But yes, I think with his pick at James Bond 007, I think your game's the top one this week. Or this month, rather.
So I'm rather shocked and flattered.
Yeah, it's not normal that your game comes out on top.
I'll change that next time.
Yeah. Well, I hope not. Right, but we have some other retro news to talk about. Don't know if you guys have heard, but there's a new system coming out called the Polymega, which is not so much a new system as rather a new system that can play all the old systems.
Yeah, it's something that I've had my eye on for a little while, and something that I would definitely pick up when they sort out worldwide distribution, because I did actually try to pre-order one, and it turns out that it would cost $70 shipping on top of the $250 that I was already spending on the system. So I'm going to wait until I can get it actually in the UK.
That's probably the best idea. I mean, even with that additional shipping cost, it probably is still cheaper than buying like the individual consoles. I mean, what does the base unit play? I think is it PlayStation, Saturn, and is it the Neo Geo arcade or something?
The PC
Neo
Engine
Geo
CD, TurboGrafx CD, which is essentially the same thing, and Mega CD.
Yeah. Which, they're not really cheap consoles. I mean, like the TurboGrafx CD is quite expensive. And like the Mega CD, again, is not a cheap addition. So I kind of think that just with that base unit, you're kind of replacing some pretty pricey consoles.
Especially when you get to those old CD drives with like the Sega CD and the TurboGrafx CD, because those are often extensions. Those drives are failing now. So even if you do get one, you don't know how much life you has in it, or maybe a lot of, like when I was looking for Sega CDs, you buy them for parts and you have to fix them yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely a way to kind of, increase the lifespan of, your game collection, because even though the actual console itself may die, you can still play your games using this Polymega.
Mm-hmm. And
of course, theoretically.
And speaking of extending the life of your collection, the coolest thing about the Polymega, we can't fail to mention this, is that it rips the game and installs it into a digital library if you want to.
Yeah, and it also includes like a digital shop as well, which apparently they're talking to some, different publishers to get their games on the shop. But you might even be able to download digital games after having the physical version, which, depending on what games there are, that could be quite interesting. Because, I mean, retro game collecting isn't the cheapest thing these days.
So, but yeah, no, it's really not, especially some of those titles. And then, like you say, then the consoles themselves, and especially one of the most interesting aspects now is they've added the Saturn drive as a module, the Saturn module,
which is pretty neat. And if they manage to have a digital shop which includes Saturn games, then that could be a big deal, because Saturn games, they just don't get any cheaper.
No, and it's really bad over here in the US because the Saturn wasn't nearly as popular, so the games were more sparse.
Well, the Saturn was hardly that popular over here either, so
yeah.
I mean, I think things are pretty bad all over. I think that the saving grace over here is that some European countries it was popular, so they did have some demand. even if it wasn't a massive amount. But yeah, it'll be interesting to keep track of it. I have like modules as well, so you can actually build on top of it and get extra console coverage other than the CD-based ones we mentioned.
I have like the NES, the Genesis Master System.
Yeah, there's
the
NES,
SNES,
Mega Drive, and 32X is including the Mega Drive one.
Yep, the TurboGrafx 16 as well.
Yeah.
So this is actually it's a little spendy, but it's a pretty brilliant design for someone who just wants to enjoy their collection. Yeah, for
the base unit's like $250 or something, and then $60 for every additional.
Yeah, roughly.
And it upscales and cleans up for HDMI, so you don't have to plug it into your old CRT. That won't work for Duck Hunt, but
Yeah, but I mean, if the quality of it's good, and it can provide good quality for your games in terms of like the HDMI, the sound and everything, then it could be pretty good. Because I think it also supports the original controllers. I think that's included within the base units.
It runs
which is a pretty big deal.
It comes with a wireless reimagining of said controller, apparently. Like each module does, but it also has the ports so you can plug in your real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly fond on third-party controllers because they tend not to be that great, so I don't really have massive expectations.
I have heard good reviews about the controller, actually. It's not like the one that came with the Retron 5 that you essentially just chuck in the bin as soon as you get it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's not out until the start of the new year, isn't it?
I think it's April.
All right, so a bit later than that. So we've got a fair wait on it. It's still like half a year away, but it sounds promising.
They did tease, well, it wasn't really a tease. They were just talking about a large developer that they're currently in talks with for the online video game store. They said due to the size of the company, they can't actually discuss who it is and can't give any clues away. But yeah, I was going to say it sounds like it's probably Sega.
Because it's not going to be Nintendo.
No, not a chance.
Yeah.
Not a chance in hell.
But yeah, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. I mean, for me, I'm waiting to see if they can cover like all the consoles I have. Because if I was to get one, it would be to replace my existing consoles. So I've got one unit, which is all of them. Because, I mean, in terms of additional consoles I want, there aren't actually that many. But if I can get one unit plugged into my HD TV and have that as just like that, and all I have to do is switch out the modules, then for me, that'd be worth it.
No, definitely. Like I said, especially if you're into preserving it, because it supports the disc games, the more you handle digital media, which is starting to break down.
Yeah.
For some of these games, you can rip it right on there, and then you just have you have your hard collection set off to the side, and you have a completely legal ROM on a piece of hardware.
Yeah. I'd say it's a good idea, and I hope it turns out well, because if it does, this could be a really big deal.
Could be a game changer.
Another system it does as well, regarding the base system, one that we missed out is the Atari Jaguar CD.
Oh, but wow. Wait, they made games for that?
Yeah, not many.
The infamous toilet bowl?
Well, to be fair, I suppose it's got support for it, and it's still additional support. I'm sure there's at least 1 or 2 games for it.
Have you seen what the Jaguar looked like with the CD attachment?
I've seen the CD attachment.
Yes.
I don't think I've seen it combined.
It does kind of look like a toilet.
Straight up looks like a toilet.
Yeah, and the controller, not the best.
The controller is bigger than the original Xbox One, and that's saying something.
Yeah, bless them. Hopefully the controller that comes with it is actually better than the Jaguar controller.
We can only hope and pray.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that we can really talk about too much, I suppose, the Polymega, because we still don't really know everything about it. And, of course, all this potential information might mean nothing if it turns out to be garbage.
Yeah,
I think it was
a flop.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still definitely kind of worth mentioning and bringing up. So, if the listeners aren't aware of it for some reason, if they've been living under a rock, then they can look into it, because I say I'm pretty interested in it. I'm not going to rush out and buy one until there's, as Matt says, until they've got like a European distributor.
Right.
But should be pretty cool. Well, moving on from the Polymega, I think it's time to wrap things up for this time. And next time we have a Halloween special in store. So we've got a nice spooky treat for you next time. So make sure that you join me, Matt, Steve and Ryan for our Halloween special. Bye everyone.
Bye.